as a buyer, if you're watching this and you're like, well, I would only use my lender. Well, really, because your lender's in New Jersey or your lender's in Texas and they don't even know what the heck's going on here in California. And you're going to want them to know all of our stuff going on so that we can drive that train and get you into your house here. So a local lender is a big deal. There's such a breadth of what you do. Banks take your money in and they loan it out to people, and they have their rules and regulations, and they're pretty tough actually sometimes.
The difference is we service the loan. So you're going to still talk to us if you have any questions. We're the #1 servicer in the country. #1.
How much is the lender a part of your home buying process? And what's the relationship between the lender and the realtor? And how often do they talk to each other? You don't quite know how they work together. And they work really well together, and they work really tightly together because we're both in charge of getting you down the road, of getting you keys to your own front door. And we wanted to talk about that today. So I'm going to talk with my great lender, Rebecca Pierce from New American Funding. And she's going to help us kind of get a whole view about how she fits into my world. And I'll talk about how I fit into her world and how eventually we're there to help you get a brand new home. So here's Rebecca coming up right now. So sometimes we have to explain, or we get in situations, or it's just what we do. Is kind of explain how you and I work together, how a lender works with a realtor, and when we all kind of lock in place and how it all kind of flows. And
so what I also like to do is tell them where the title company fits in. They don't know who's in charge of their money. And so I like to say, the title company is right in the middle, and everybody is connecting to them. They're dispersing the money to everybody.
It's true. They're kind of the tie between you and I. Mostly you and the home buyer.
And the seller. The seller gets paid. The realtor gets paid. Everybody gets paid through that. But our money comes into them. The borrower's money comes into them. If there's down payment, it comes into them. They disperse the money.
Exactly. The title and escrow companies are really the rock, or the central place where the whole world of buying your house happens.
And their earnest money goes there. So that helps them to understand that too, because their earnest money at the last minute, all their funds to close all go into the same pool, then it's dispersed.
Oftentimes that's when I first bring it up, if not in my first time meeting with you, especially if you're a first time buyer, like what is an escrow company and a title company, and when are you even going to call them or walk into the office? When you put your little down payment or your initial deposit down, that's when.
2 different things called escrows. We have escrows in our payments that are your taxes, property taxes and insurance. But then you have this escrow company. So it's this problem trying to figure this out. So I'm like, okay, an escrow is like somewhere who's holding your money.
It's the French word for middleman, middle person, middle situation. I know someone who speaks fluent French is going to write me a Bible on that one in the comment section. But it's a French word for a middleman, because you're not going to give your down payment and your transaction to the seller directly. You want it kind of held in a place in the middle that's safe, in trust. It's being held in trust in the escrow company. So yeah, that's like it's a big deal, and most people don't even know.
So you ought to write that down for note. I might touch on it here, but it would be a great, what happens in a transaction with your money? Where does it go?
So how do we usually start out? I'm usually calling you and saying, hey, I just met new buyers. Yeah. And I learn a little bit about them.
Right.
Yeah. I have a conversation. I learn about them. Maybe they watch my videos, and they're buying a house in Sonoma County, and they're like, we don't even know where to start. Or maybe they've bought a few and they need a great lender. And this is where I give you a call or a text or an email and give you names and phone numbers, and you do what from there?
And now let me back up just a minute. One thing that's good is that you have this person coming in from another place. May have their bank or whatever, but most local realtors don't like to use out of state people because they don't have as much control if they're on a different time zone. Local lenders, and I would be classified as that, because or those that know are used to doing that county.
You lived here a long time and you helped me grow up as a realtor.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah,
we had glitches and hitches and interesting things along the way.
always.
And yeah, I get confronted with somebody wanting an aunt or an uncle or a sister to be their lender, but they're in another state or another county and they don't know what goes on here.
Right, right,
And what's happened between you and I, we have a trusted relationship where I know you make deals happen
right.
because stuff happens and
Yeah,
you kind of straighten out the windy road of getting a loan
yeah, yep,
and
yep,
make it happen because sometimes it seems mysterious.
yeah,
And you help them get keys to their front door.
yeah,
And
yeah,
because you've done that with me and our clients for years now, we stick together because we know how to chop it all up, put it back together, and
yeah,
get them down the road to buying a house.
exactly.
Realtors, like when they find an awesome lender, they never let you go.
Yeah,
So, so as a buyer, if you're watching this and you're like, well, I would only use my lender. Well, really, because your lender's in New Jersey or
yeah,
your lender's in Texas and they don't even know what the heck's going on here in California. And you're going to want them to know
right.
all of our stuff going on so that
Mhm.
we can drive that train and get you into your house here. So a local lender is a big deal.
Well, it's a big deal for the listing agent that accepts the offer, because if they've got a lender state of Washington, they're like, okay, I like this one. They'll go with the local lender. So
Fine.
it's a big
It's
point
a
to make.
it's a big point to make when I'm sitting with people who are selling their house and we're at their kitchen table and
Right,
we have two or three offers
right.
on the kitchen table and we're looking at them, two loans and cash, or
Mhm.
everybody's getting a loan and they're making decisions. And one or two of the loans for these potential future buyers are from another state, which is pretty common.
Or that they're the big box banks, the Wells Fargo's, the Bank of America's. I know you don't
Yeah.
want to point that, but those realtors don't like those big box banks because you're a number to them.
Yeah, things get problematic when
Yeah,
it's not personal and
yeah,
you're not a broker anymore, but you're a lender, but you're different than a bank because banks only sell bank products.
right.
Whereas you tap into a lot of pools. Can you like elaborate on that and on top of the fact that every seller wants a local lender? That's kind of the point we're making, but
Right.
just tap into what you do.
So we are a direct lender. We service almost $20 billion a year. And so that means when you write your check, you're writing it to New American Funding. And so we're a huge bank, but yet a mom and pop bank that's amazing because we get things done. So the
Yeah,
way
I
it
can
works,
attest to that.
yes. So we do all the different kinds of mortgages, where a typical box bank does certain grouping in the box. And so
Yeah.
we do more things than that, and we don't have as many restrictions. We're not a cash bank. You don't come in to create a transaction with us. We just do mortgages, but we do mortgages very well. We're one of the number one lenders in the country. And so you come into us and we can get you a conforming loan. We can get you the government loans. We can go into the non conforming world. The non conforming world is anything that doesn't fit into the box of the conforming. The conforming, your 1099, your W 2, um, employed, self employed
So big
people.
deal. Yeah. So there's such a breadth of what you do rather than just one, like banks take your money in and they loan it out to people and they have their rules and regulations and they're pretty tough actually sometimes
Yes.
because
Yeah.
they're lending out other people's money, which you are too, but
Yeah.
it's different.
Right.
And
We
we're not going to get
service,
into that, but
the
yeah,
difference is we service the loan. So you're going to still talk to us if you have any questions. We're the number one servicer in the country. Number one.
that's a big deal. Because I know I owned a house and it went through like 12 servicers over my
Exactly.
12, probably every year I owned it.
Yes.
I'd get a formal letter. Hi, your servicer is now Green Beans Bank. And I was like, okay. And you have to
Yeah,
change your, yeah. So this is a big deal. And you really know Sonoma County because
I
you lived
did.
here for a long, 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 long time.
I did. Yeah.
And so Rebecca knows what's going on in Petaluma, Sonoma, every city in the county and beyond, Marin County too. Uh, Mendocino. I don't know. Did you ever? Maybe Mendocino too, but it doesn't really matter the state of California.
Yep.
But she's very familiar with Sonoma County, which is really where we link up, and my real estate world. So yeah, the local lender is the only lender, the super important lender. Remember that, buyer, home buyer. Local lenders are important. The
Because
biggest deal.
because the listing agent is the one who's going to decide which one of these offers gets taken. And they always like to deal with a local lender.
Yeah. The listing agent sits at the kitchen table looking at all those choices they have with the owner. The owner makes the final choice, but that agent is explaining to the seller why a local lender over here is probably their better choice. And
Mhm.
that seller can go and pick whatever offer they want to pick. But because probably a lot of realtors have been had some bad luck along the way, they want the local lender who they know and
Right.
who can make it happen. So we explain and probably over explain to our sellers like that's the best one to pick because I know her and she can get it done. And so they'll
Mhm.
be like, okay, that's a safe one. Let's go with them. We want to get our house sold.
Right.
So interesting because it goes both ways. For the buyer needs to feel safe and comfortable with you, and the seller is getting information from their seller's agent that that's a local lender and I know her and yeah.
Mhm.
It's a big, 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 big deal. So, okay, so we were going to go down the road of I just sent you people and what happens next? You
That's
call the
great.
buyers.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's a
So
great
let's do
question.
that because anybody watching this is like, yeah, I want to buy a house in a year or 10 months. It can be like, what happens after we meet Anita? So I give you Rebecca Pierce.
Very good. Thank you, Anita. So that is the very first step. She refers the person to me, or I refer it back to her. So what happens next is the client will call me and I will take basic information. Who do you work for? What is your income? Where are you living right now? How much down payment do you have? What's your credit score like? Do you own any other properties? Those type questions, just typical basic questions. So enough that I can go ahead and pull your credit and put it into our automated system and come back and say, wow, look, you're going to be pre-approved. You can go with this loan or you can go with this loan. You have multiple choices. Or maybe we're just in this one box and that's okay. Some
You
people
haven't given them the loan yet. You're just kind of gathering information.
That's right. That's right. Well,
Preliminary. You're doing the pre-approval. So
I'm
to
doing
speak.
the pre-approval. So I've pulled the credit. I've ran it through an automated system. The automated system has said, yes, we like this loan. And then that's when they get to come back to Anita and say, oh, they're telling me we can get a loan. So they start working with Anita over here. And on this side over here, I'm still working and I go ahead and get it through underwriting. We verify things and I come back and say, ooh, not only are you pre-approved, now you're underwritten pre-approved. And so
Aha.
when a
So
seller,
underwritten is when you get approval to package this loan from a board of directors or somebody at your company that
they're,
a panel of people that are
they're
like,
called underwriters. So they are the final decision maker on you getting your loan. And so they look at it and say, yes, based on this information, we will do this loan as long as nothing changes. Then we'll do
right.
this loan. And
Right,
so
and a lot of times that pre-approval doesn't happen. I'm sorry, the underwriting is taking place during the 21-day
yeah,
process, which kicks in more typically when you make an offer, home buyer. Uh, in California, the default standard on the contract that the seller knows is that you're going to come in and do some inspections, and your lender is out packaging the loan and getting it underwritten. But with Rebecca, it's underwritten pretty much
if
before you and I even go looking for a house. So
if
we're
I
way through the process.
yes, sometimes you come to me and they already are in contract. So then it starts from there.
Right, right.
But
Sometimes that happens.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
doesn't it look better to a listing agent to see one that's already been underwritten?
Yes.
Absolutely. That's why we
Yeah.
do it. So we get our clients ahead by getting them underwritten. So they
You
have a
move
better,
quickly.
stronger offer.
Yes. It's a big deal.
Yes.
Yeah. You're well ahead of most lending institutions that once the offer gets accepted by the seller, then I re-explain that, okay, your lender has 21 days to put together a loan, but if they can't do it or something happens, and you can back out and get your a little deposit back, which isn't so little. It's 20 grand sitting there at the escrow company. But with Rebecca, the hard part is done ahead of time,
Yes.
which
Hmm.
makes your offer very attractive to the sellers. So
Right.
that's kind of, yeah. So what happens too is like Rebecca will call me within a day or two or maybe 24 hours and say, look, they're pre-approved to buy a $900,000 house or up to a million or up to 700. And my clients usually call me back and go, okay, we talked to Rebecca and she said we could buy a house up to as much as whatever, 800,000, 900,000. So I know they've connected with you and you've connected with them. And we kind of start the actual home search process, right?
Hmm.
Now, we go through quite another elimination process as the realtor, but how many times have I called you from a kitchen of a vacant house? We're looking at houses. We looked at 3 houses and they like the most expensive one that's right on the edge of what they can afford.
Hmm.
And I call you and I put you on speakerphone and I say, so this house is kind of like 980. How's that going to work? Sometimes you can figure that out on the fly and tell them, look, it'll be one of two things, right? No, you won't quite qualify for that. Keep the price down. Or you're going to tell them you could, that'll be on the edge of your budget, but you would qualify. You can kind of do that stuff somewhat on the fly with me, depending.
Yes. So, for instance, maybe their 880 is their max, but they find something at 900. If they have the extra $20,000 in their pocket, they can pay for that difference. So, there's many, many options.
Yeah, because sometimes buyers have a little cash more than maybe they've let you know about.
Right.
Maybe a little cash because they really don't want their budget to go over 800.
Right.
But they kind of know they're entering Sonoma County and maybe they're going to have to get to 880 to get it where they won't have to go in and blow the whole thing apart and rebuild it.
Hmm.
And so they call you and or I call them for you while we're standing right there on the front lawn and we just kind of make sure that this house would be worthy of going through the process of putting in an offer.
Right.
Right. Okay. So we either move on from that house or they're so excited about it they can't even breathe. And I run home and put together the offer, right?
Right. Right.
Okay. And so I come home and I'm doing a little homework on this house and maybe I'm calling the agent trying to figure out if they have other offers and some of the other details. And you're doing what at that time when I go, we're going to be putting in an offer? And you tell me when and or you ask me when and I say, well, it's got to be in tomorrow at noon.
Well,
It's always like that, right?
if we've already got them pre-approved, then the pre-approval letter is already ready. I just need to know what your asking price is, what your offer is, and then I will put that exact dollar amount in that pre-approval and get that over to you.
and you email it to me and I include it in the offer when I send it off.
That's right.
So much better. Because sometimes in the past, I've got the offer all ready to go, but I have to wait a while to get the pre-approval letter. Not from you, I don't think. I think you always get them over to me in a heartbeat, but I've
Right.
had the experience of having to use another lender that my buyers already love and adore, or they are just going to use. I don't always know the story behind it. And it takes them a day to get me the pre-approval letter or 2 days. And I've lost out on the opportunity to put in an offer because they already chose, the seller already got offers and they picked one. That's a real drag.
What's the best thing is to go ahead and give you a pre-approval letter at what their max is. But you
Ah,
don't always want to offer and let the listing agent know, hey, they can go $50,000 more. Let's increase
yeah,
the sales price. So then I'll give you the updated, whatever your offer price is. That's what we want the pre-approval letter to be.
yeah, yeah.
Or maybe
Try to
just
make it for exactly what we're doing.
right.
Yeah. Because we might negotiate.
Absolutely.
And
That's
we don't want them, I'm protecting you, the buyer. I'm your agent. And I don't want them knowing you can afford 100 grand more.
right. Right.
No.
Right.
Yeah. So we don't do those generalized letters,
Right.
really.
Right.
Yeah. So, okay. So I put in the offer and magically my buyers were accepted by the sellers. Yeah.
Yay. Yay.
That's when everybody's doing backflips, right? And that's when you and I are closer than ever.
Right.
And things are happening. This is when we really connect
Right.
to the escrow company. And so the next step is I'm sending that signed acceptance to escrow, and I've instructed my buyers to bring their initial deposit, which is not their down payment. Can you kind of explain that?
Yes. So the initial deposit is held by the title company in escrow. So they're the middleman. They're holding that money for you.
Uh huh.
That money is determined by the contract, how much that's going to be. Your deposit is different than your down payment. It's part of it. It can be part of it, but it doesn't mean it's the same thing. You may be
Right.
putting 5% down, 10% down, 20% down. Your escrow earnest money deposit is only sometimes 1%, sometimes 3%, whatever is negotiated on the sales contract.
At Keller Williams, I always do 3.5%, but we could do less. Whatever it's going to take for me to make that offer attractive to the seller.
Yes.
But I start with 3.5%, or I'm sorry, 3%. I say 3.5 because I get that mixed up with the FHA loan. Three
Right.
percent is all you need to put down.
Yes.
3% of $800,000 house, $24,000. You're going
Right.
to bring that in a written check or a cashier's check to the title company. You're not giving it to your realtor, and that opens escrow officially.
Yeah.
I can open it ahead of time, which I often do. We're not going to get into that now, but just for the sake of this video, you, the buyer, are getting escrow open by showing the money to the seller. You just put down, you initially deposited, made an initial deposit of 25 grand. It's sitting there, no one's going to spend it, right?
Right.
It's
Right.
sitting
No,
there in
he's gonna
escrow at a safe company, at an escrow company. And that launches the 21-day process for the lender to package the loan. But we've got it under underwriting, so we're more than halfway there, right? So
yeah.
take it from there. What happens?
So as soon as we get the contract, then we start the disclosure process. So we put it all in there. We get title fees from the title company that has been chosen on the contract, the same one you send that earnest money deposit to. They tell
Yeah.
us what your fees are, what the county fees are, what the estimated recording fees are, all
Take
those.
it through the process,
Right. So we're
right?
collecting all that. And once we have all that information, we disclose it to you as a buyer. And so
Mhm.
you see what all the costs are estimated to, what your total cash to close is, what your monthly payment would be.
You
And
mean
now,
there's fees and costs for closing?
Yes, there's two different kinds of fees and costs for closing.
Uh-huh.
Now, one of them is
Okay.
called closing cost, and that's hard cost. That's one time hard cost, but it's exactly what everything's charged. Nobody charges you more than the actual fees.
And those are all a part of the day you sign your docs and when you really buy your house, those are something you pay for. And that's in the realm and range of 9 or 10 grand-ish.
So that's the closing
Oh,
costs and prepaids together are about
okay.
10 to 12 in Sonoma County. The other part of the closing costs are called prepaid costs. You're prepaying in advance your taxes and your insurance. So we're collecting those in advance. So when they're due, then they get dispersed.
Don't let your brain explode. This is what's all happening behind the scenes
That's right.
when you're going and seeing your pest inspector and your home inspector and all these 21 days are going by. This is what Rebecca's doing. Keep going.
That's right. So once we have all those title fees and you've signed it as a buyer saying, yes, we're going forward, then the appraisal gets ordered, title gets ordered. All of those things come back around to us. Processing gets it all pretty for the underwriter, and it goes back to that underwriter who got you approved in the first place. The underwriter's like, "Woo, this is a great deal. We've got this appraisal in, we've got the title in, we've got updated pay stubs, we've got bank statements. Everything is updated, looks good." They come back and say, "Okay, there's one little thing that's missing here. I need to get this from my buyer." And so we'll go back and say, "Okay, we needed one more item," and then we send it back into underwriting.
Even though they're underwritten and all that stuff, this is a process.
It is. It is.
So hold on to your panties because you're going through a process.
Right.
This isn't snappy, snappy. So Rebecca may call you and go, "Oh, you know what? I also need to see something from your Schwab account or a letter from your parents because they gave you 50 grand."
Right.
There's stuff, okay? Now we try to get that all going ahead of time. I know about these things. I try to get your duckies all lined up before we even go down this road, but every once in a while you got to give them something else.
Yes.
So it's okay. This is part of the process. We're steering you down the road. So uh, I would say 97% of the time we got this all ready before we even allow you to put in an offer. Like I've got you all lined up, and so does Rebecca. But underwriters like what they like, and they're giving you a lot of money. So you might have to dig into somewhere and get a statement of something.
Well, because sometimes it could have been more than 30 days since we had the underwritten approval. So therefore, we need the most recent pay stubs. We need that new bank statement that came out.
So it took us 40, 50 days to find you a house. Now we got to
Right.
redo some of this stuff. They need to refresh, make sure you're still employed and have a pulse. I mean,
That's right. That's right.
right? They're covering their tail to make
Right.
sure. Okay. So all this stuff kind of follows you around up
Right.
until the time you buy a house. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay. So you're gathering things.
Right.
And
Homeowners
then,
insurance is another thing. So you've got to get a homeowner's insurance quote.
aha.
And so we're usually waiting on that too, because you shop around, you get that homeowner's insurance quote, they give you the quote, then we get it updated, and then it goes back into underwriting. So there is lots of people involved. Could be up to 50 people involved just to get your loan and your mortgage and your house all set, ready to close.
Because lenders don't loan on houses that aren't insured.
No, we have to insure the borrower and if you had a fire and it burnt down, who's going to pay your mortgage? That's what the
And
insurance is for.
And just to throw this in, just in case you're paying cash for your next house, you need to get homeowners insurance. A sadly huge amount of people in Sonoma County owned their $1 million homes cash and they did not have any insurance on them.
Oh, so
It is
sad.
the most horrible things we read in the paper for 3 years.
Mm,
Till the day I die, that'll just make me sad.
yeah,
And if you own a $3 million home, you could probably just go get your other 3 million and build another one. But get your house insured, whether you pay cash or the bank demands it.
right.
Anyway, You were talking about insurance, so keep going.
So after you get all those ducks in a row and you get your insurance, the title has been taken care of, the appraisal has been taken care of. We are putting all that together. Our processors put it together. It goes back into underwriting for a final approval. So the underwriter says, "Yep, you got everything I needed," and they give us a clear to close. And that's when everybody's happy. Everybody's like, "Woo! We
I
are
love that phone
closing."
call.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Then you can sign, it depends on when the closing disclosure has gone out. After you sign the final closing disclosure, you wait 3 days and then you sign your final papers with the title company in front of a notary. And then it comes back to us. We make sure everything is done properly. And we say, "Yep, we're done." We send our funds. If you look at it this way, all of the funds come into the title company. So you sent your earnings money there. We as a lender send all your new loan there. And then you bring your down payment there. And it all gets done, recorded. And what does that title company do? At the end, they disperse it to everybody. Title companies release to real estate agents that got paid. They give the seller their money. If you have any extra money back, you get your money back. So
Right.
everybody gets
So
paid.
there's a final statement
Yes.
that you sit down and you will study with the notary or the escrow officer, one or the other. Sometimes they're both. Uh, and they're going to show you what the buyer pays for and what the seller pays for.
Mhm.
And by the way, I've never missed a closing. I'm always there holding your hand because it's a big moment, and sometimes changes and things and adjustments need to happen, even
And I'm
at the
a phone
closing
call
table.
away.
And Rebecca's a phone call away. Rebecca is at nearly all my closings. And sometimes she can't make it. She's on the road, or it's okay. One of us is there to take care of you. I'm always there because there's things. And sometimes I do need to make a phone call to Rebecca and go, "What, why did this happen?" Or "What are we doing here?" And things change up until the last minute. Sometimes the escrow officer will leave the room and reprint that thing because she didn't know something we did, or I don't know. There's changes up, and even after you've signed all your docs, they tell you you'll sign documents. I don't know what they're called, but you'll sign documents that say that will you cooperate with making any adjustments we need to make after this, like a signature that's weird or something. So it ain't over till it's over, and your money flows into the escrow company buyer. You're paying the money, and then as Rebecca said, it flows out to the seller and to the real estate companies and to Rebecca. They do all of the money management, the
Mhm.
escrow and title company. They're two separate things, but they're always kind of together in the same company, right?
Depends on where in the state and which state you are. Some have separate title and escrow, and some are the same.
Right. It's a count. Is it a county by county thing?
Yeah,
Yeah. So we got 58 different kinds of ways of doing that. I think down in LA and Orange County, they're separate.
they are. Mhm.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's kind of interesting. So, all the counties are different in California. So, and I think probably in some states in New York, I know you sign all your documents with an attorney.
Yes.
And, but in CA, we do it with the realtor and the escrow officer slash uh, uh, a notary, depending on who's available at the time. And
Mhm.
sometimes, are they still sending the notaries out to people's homes?
Yes, they still are.
Still doing that. So a mobile notary might come to your kitchen table to do all this that we're talking about.
Mhm.
It depends. It depends. It depends on what's going on. And so Rebecca and I hold your hand all the way through
Mhm.
the process. And the funnel kind of starts up here with the introduction, and then she and I get closer and closer, and then all of us are heavily involved in the process of making sure we hand you keys and you get your house. Right?
Yay!
Yay! It's so exciting. It's fun. It's intense. But we tell you it's intense right away. At least I do. And
Yes.
I'm there to just make sure it's all moving along because it's a whole bunch. And it's different every time we talk to people, right? Every single transaction.
Yeah.
Even though the rules are the same and the basics of what I do, what I'm licensed for, etc., and you, um, personalities are different. financial situations are different, and we just adapt and overcome and wiggle through and straighten out the curves and do whatever we need to do to make sure you own that house and you're going to have peaceful living in it once you get your keys. Right? It's a
Right.
lot of fun. I enjoy the process. So, anything else to wrap up the details?
I don't think so. I
We
just
covered a lot.
we did. We covered a lot. I like to educate people. So from
I
the
do too.
beginning, you may not realize what's going on, but by the time you're finished, you're like, okay, I've got a good understanding of this, and I know I've made a good decision.
Yeah,
So I really like people to know that and feel good that they
I
made
know.
this good decision.
I know it's such a big deal. It's funny because I met a realtor the other day who became a realtor because she learned all the stuff that we do.
Yeah.
She's like, I can do that. It's the reason why a lot of people become realtors. Little do they know. Anyway, we'll talk about that at another time. But it's fun, it's interesting, but it's intense and it's a lot. You have to be able to spin a lot of plates in the air at one time to make this come down to the point where we're giving you keys to your front door and we can walk away going, they're going to be so happy. It's such a great house. It's just what they wanted. And then when I get my paycheck and you get your paycheck, we're like,
Yeah.
we were worthy of getting paid because we did a great job. And it's good, that's how it's all supposed to happen. So, anyway, we hope we gave you a good idea of the whole process that happens and a little bit of insight into the lender realtor relationship. If you like the video, give me a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, look for your free buyer's guide, and the next video is coming up right there.